Hey there everybody, it's Russ. Welcome to another episode of Peak Mechanical. In this video, we're going to take a look at what might be, in my opinion, one of the best budget alt cranks out there on the market. This is a crank from the bike shop Spa Cycles based in the UK. Actually, I have two different versions of this. This one is based on the TD2 crank shape, and this is a 165 length. You guys know I'm a big fan of shorter cranks. They actually offer this chainring combination in a 160, but it uses the XD2 crank body. So same chain rings, different crank arms, and the spacings are such where this version has no problem working with an 11-speed chain, and this one they said only works up to 9-speed. There's something about the spacing between the chain rings which would make, at least they say, an 11-speed crank kind of fall in between the two chain rings. I haven't mounted it yet, so I don't know if that's true per se, but that is something that they told me might happen. So in order to anticipate this future problem, while I was ordering stuff from Spa Cycles, I also ordered some chainring spacers. These are 0.5 millimeter, and these are, I believe, 1 millimeter. I'm not quite sure which one will work. I'll probably start out with the 0.5 mil and see if that fixes any potential shifting problem. But the reason I'm doing this video is to kind of illustrate some of the problems that you may encounter, hacking your own wide range double. A lot of people have suggested, why not just modify an old 3x crank? And I've done that in the past, but I have had the problem of the chain falling between the two chain rings, which this might do. So if that does happen when in the installation, I'll show you guys the fix. Hopefully this will fix it using some simple chainring spacers. After those fixes, we should have a strong and durable wide range double, not unlike today's sponsor, Old Man Mountain. Old Man Mountain has been making some of the most rugged and multifunctional racks out there on the market for over 25 years. The range of racks are super customizable to fit almost any kind of bike. From full suspension mountain bikes to gravel and traditional touring bikes, they've got a way to put a rack on it. They were also the first to offer through axle mounted racks. When they're mounted on the through axle, their stated weight capacity is a whopping 70 pounds. So whether you're bike packing or basket packing, Old Man Mountain has you covered. We've used their racks over the years on tours, and they're definitely peak mechanical. Before I install these bad boys, however, I want to go over the fog cutter just to show you what we're working with. Okay, tight squeeze, tight squeeze, tight squeeze. So some really quick details. Again, this is the Soma fog cutter. I just posted a review. I am using index shifters. It is the Tiagra 4700 10-speed shifter, but in the previous video, we discovered that it uses the same cable pull as, Shimano's 11 and even 12-speed shifters. So if you have 11-speed, these hacks will work for you as well. Currently, what we have on the bike are our prototype alt cranks, which we're making with Mary Sales. These have a 40-26 chainring combination. The final iteration will be 42-26. How this is different from this shiny guy is, currently it's black, but there will be a silver version. You'll also notice that this uses a hollow spindle, so this is going to be Shimano Holotech 2 compatible, whereas this one is square taper. The original run will come in lengths of 175, 170, 165, but I've been pushing hard to go down to 155, and I think they'll do that. They just have to reforge the arms. Other things is that this has a 110-74 BCD, so similar to the Spa Cycles cranks, but this spider is actually removable. It mounts to the crank arm using a SRAM 3-bolt pattern. So you can get this crank set, run it with this BCD, but then also use a direct mount chainring for those times you want to go one by. I'm going to adjust the tripod here just a little bit. So one of the big questions I get asked is, when I do these wide range doubles, what kind of front derailleur am I using? And what I've discovered is you can typically get away with regular road derailleurs. Although the arch of the front derailleur doesn't neatly follow the arc of the chainring, it'll still work. This is a Microshift Sword Black front derailleur. It's designed to work with their 4630, but here, although it doesn't fit aesthetically with this 4026, again, the final version is going to be 4226. This is just a prototype. It shifts fine. You do have to lower this a bit. I've found that you can actually, run it a little bit higher than suggested, air quotes, just so you can get some clearance from the chainstay. So I'm going to back this up and we can see how it shifts. Again, it shifts great on the road. It's a little bit clunky on the stand, but trust me, it works okay. Works great. Okay, so hopefully that illustrated that although it would be nice to have a front derailleur that perfectly matches the arc of the chainring, not necessary. If you can find a typical road derailleur that'll work with a 4630, chances are it will work with a 4026 or 4226. If you guys watched my review on the Ritchie Montebello, it actually started its life with I believe it was like a 4830 something White Industries crank, SRAM front derailleur. I actually did a straight swap and just put in the Spa Cycles crank. I didn't even adjust the height. And even though that front derailleur was originally set up for a 48 tooth big chainring, it worked pretty much out of the box with the smaller 4226. Didn't have to adjust the height or anything. So while it would be ideal to have a front derailleur that better matches the arc of the big chainring, as it were, not necessary. The good thing about front derailleurs is that they're fairly cheap. I mean, even brand new, you can get them for like 20 bucks or something like that. So it pays to experiment, play with the height. You don't have to set it perfectly like they say. It can run a little bit higher. Definitely get that clearance on that chainstay. So the next thing we're gonna do is remove the prototype crank, and we're gonna put on one of these silver Spa Cycles cranks, because bike components should be silver, in my opinion. I have two options. Again, this is 165 length. This is what I've been testing the last couple months. I put on the Ritchie. I have one of these currently on Laura's bike. I know this one will work. This is the one where they state it will shift 9, 10, and 11 speeds. But we're not going to install this one. We're instead going to install this one. Again, this one is based on the XD2R Sugino crank arm. This one is shorter in length, and they also say that there might be problems with this shifting a narrower chain, like an 11-speed chain. That's currently what I have on this. So we're gonna see if that's true. Otherwise, if it does happen to work for whatever reason, then this would be a viable option to get the silver crank arm down to 160 with a 4226. If it doesn't work right away, I will remove this, and then we'll start playing with some chainring spacers. So let's pop this off and get this guy on. So I've got the cranks on. A couple more things you should know about this one. So this crank, the other crank, the TD2, for this you need like a 118 and 119 bottom bracket. For this one, you actually have to run a 110, so a lot shorter spindle. So that's one thing to note, that although they look very similar, you should always double check and just make sure you're using the right spindle length for the cranks. I did have to play with the front derailleur a little bit. I raised it up, probably like slightly higher than you would think would be optimal. But again, you just gotta play around and find that sweet spot where it pushes the chain over. What else? One kind of surprising thing is it's actually shifting the 11-speed chain between the two chain rings just fine. When I had ordered these cranks, this is something they'd warned me about, that they hadn't tested it themselves, but the chain, especially if you're running a narrower chain, would fall in between the two chain rings. So typically these cranks are used with 9-speed chains, but in my very limited on the bike stand testing, it seems to shift okay. Let's move the camera around here. Let's go there. Okay, so I want to say I'm disappointed that it worked pretty straightforwardly. I was prepared to have to remove this and then use it as a teaching moment to show you guys the chainring spacers. But that probably saves me like a whole hour of filming and mucking around. So I'm stoked that this worked, because now I've got 4226 in silver with a 160 length crank. So probably one of the coolest things about these cranks is that they're not very expensive at the moment. I believe Spa Cycles sells this for about 80 euro, and that's with the cranks and the chain rings included. You do have to get the right size bottom bracket, and that's in the UK. Since we live here in Spain, in the EU, when I buy it, aside from waiting like 3 weeks, there's 20% VAT. If you guys don't know what VAT is because you're in the US, so you guys are in for a treat. If you're in the States and you order this, it'll be about, 80, it's almost par, maybe like $90, definitely less than 100 for the cranks and chain rings, plus shipping and the bottom bracket. So I think this might be the best deal if you want to play with a 4226 wide range double configuration in silver in shorter lengths, but don't mind the square taper bottom bracket. It's going to be a turn off to some. I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, unless you're putting out like massive watts or going mountain biking with it, you're not going to have any issues. If you're just commuting, even road touring with it, nothing crazy, then it'll serve you well. If you guys are freaked out by the square taper, there is of course our alt cranks, which are soon to come. Again, the alt cranks will come in silver with lengths down to 165 the first run, but it does use the Shimano 24mm spindle, so maybe slightly stiffer sensation, if you will. Probably more importantly, like an actual kind of difference, is that if you have a bike with a T47 bottom bracket and want to run in 4226, some kind of wide range double configuration, then this will be the only solution, because as far as I know, there's no way to get square taper cranks into a T47 bottom bracket unless you go with the super expensive Philwood bottom bracket, which doesn't appear to be in stock. I don't know if there's like a reducer or something, but this will be a great option. If you run GRX or some other 24mm spindle Shimano compatible crank, these should just slip in. You might have to put some spacers to bump it out to fit your front derailleur. I asked Jim at Mary Sales if they can do a special like purple and teal edition. So purple big ring and teal inner spider with purple chainring bolts, and he said he's going to ask, so that might be a thing. So definitely subscribe to the channel, watch this space when they'll finally be released. But in the interim, if you want something shiny, silver, not too spendy, don't want to fully commit and want to try kind of like a low stakes option, then I would highly recommend these cranks so far. I mean, I've used them on the Ritchie bike. They're currently on Laura's bike. I bought 2 pairs for my personal bikes until our alt cranks become available. One more thing, if you guys dig this content, we just got hats in our store. That's how we keep the lights on, how we can afford to buy cranks to tinker with and have the time to show you guys these interesting hacks. So definitely check out the store. We've got hats, we've got stickers, we've got grips. So if you found this video helpful or this series, you know what to do. As always, keep the supple side down.